When QR codes first came out, I thought they were awful, never going to catch on. This is a flowchart from the time that really resonated with me. The problem, as I saw it, was that QR codes are ugly, and they mean nothing to people. I would rather just see a website or a word that I could Google. QR codes are a language for machines, and I am a human. But I was wrong. QR codes obviously turned out to be so useful that they are now ubiquitous, used in everything from tickets to restaurant menus and advertising. In some countries, they're the most common way to exchange money. And the story of QR codes is a very human one. The origin of these checkerboard patterns actually dates back to our first efforts at digitizing information. In 1825, there was a renowned painter who lived in New Haven, Connecticut, with his wife and 2 kids. His big break came one day when he was invited to paint a portrait of the Marquis de Lafayette, a hero of the American Revolution. Even though his wife was expecting their 3rd child any day, the opportunity was too good to pass up, and he hastily set off for Washington, D.C., where Lafayette was waiting. There, the painter wrote to his wife describing his first meeting with Lafayette, signing off with the words, "We'll write again soon. Love to all the children. In the greatest haste, but with the same ardent affection as ever, thy loving husband." After a few days with no reply, a courier delivered a letter which said his wife was ill after childbirth. Worried, the painter rushed home. He traveled by horse and wagon day and night, managing to arrive back in New Haven in several days. But it was far too late. His wife had died. Not only that, he had missed the funeral. Her body was already buried in the ground. The painter's name was Samuel Finley Breeze Morse. From that day forward, Morse set out to find a faster way to communicate over long distances. He got a job at New York University where he attended lectures on electricity, a rapidly developing field at the time. In 1836, along with Joseph Henry and Alfred Vail, he devised a machine that could send electrical pulses along a wire. This was not the first electric telegraph, but it was the simplest. In the UK, another team had set up a series of circuits to move 5 magnetic needles to point at letters and numbers. Morse's system required only a single circuit, but the simplicity of the apparatus demanded a cleverer method of encoding information. On the circuit, you could send short or long pulses. Morse turned these into dots and dashes. The most common letters could be sent with a single key press, a dot for an E and a dash for a T. The other letters were arranged by frequency and assigned increasingly complex codes. These symbols were meant to be printed at the receiver on a paper strip, but operators soon realized they could recognize the letters just by the sound. This sped up the rate at which information could be sent and received, so Morse code became an international standard for rapid messaging. Widely used in the military, maritime communications, and aviation. The universally recognized distress call, SOS, what does it stand for? Nothing. It just happens to be easy to send and recognize in Morse code. Morse code revolutionized communication, but in the next century, it would transform a totally different industry. In the late 1940s, Bernard Silver was an engineering student at Drexel University in Pennsylvania. One day, he overheard the president of a local supermarket chain asking the engineering dean to find a way to speed up the checkout process. At that time, cashiers had to type in each item and its price by hand, a process so tedious and repetitive that many cashiers had developed carpal tunnel syndrome. Silver told his friend Norman Joseph Woodland about the problem, and together they began experimenting. After several false starts, Woodland moved down to Florida, and one day, on the beach, he drew some dots and dashes of Morse code in the sand, something he was very familiar with as a Boy Scout. He recalls, "I just extended the dots and dashes downwards and made narrow lines and wide lines out of them." And thus, the first barcode was created. From this humble beginning evolved the Universal Product Code, or UPC barcode, capable of storing a simple string of 12 numbers.
It's read by scanning a laser across it and checking how much light is reflected to read the black and white lines, essentially as dots and dashes. A pair of vertical lines are placed at the beginning, middle, and end to ensure the scanner reads the code properly. The code is divided into left and right halves. Numbers at either side have their black and white lines flipped so that the scanner can tell left and right apart even while reading upside down. When viewed upright, the numbers typically specify the manufacturer on the left and the product on the right. Manufacturers actually pay large sums of money to reserve a given amount of numbers to themselves so that they can exclusively register their products. In this way, the 12 digits of a barcode uniquely specify every single grocery item you've ever bought. This jar of Jif peanut butter is identified by the same 12 digits, no matter where in the world it's found. And all forms of peanut butter, smooth, crunchy, stir, no stir, sugar-free, low sodium, across all brands, get their own unique barcode.
Will we ever run out of barcodes? Well, 12 digits could combine to provide 10 to the 12, that is, 1 trillion different possible sequences.
To date, 1.24 billion barcodes have been registered, a number that is rising every day. So they won't last us forever.
But that's not why people began to look for alternatives to barcodes. It was really the amount of information a single barcode could store. 12 digits by themselves could only identify one product. But what if someone wanted to know more information, like where that product came from?
In 1986, cattle in the UK began showing symptoms of a curious brain disease, bovine spongiform encephalopathy, or mad cow disease for short. It is spread when cattle ate feed containing prions, misfolded proteins. And if people ate beef containing tissue from the brain or spinal cord of infected cattle, they could contract a related brain illness that literally turns your brain into a sponge. Now, as no test could detect mad cow disease in living cows, millions of cattle were culled. Health officials sought a method to track sources and imports of beef.
But with all the information this would require for any one piece of beef, barcodes were insufficient.
American inventor David Allais tried to solve the problem by stacking many barcodes on top of each other. The result, code 49, looked like a bookshelf. This is actually the predecessor of PDF 417, a code often used on airline boarding passes.
But code 49 didn't solve the data quantity problem. At best, it multiplied the information a barcode could carry by a handful.
A more efficient way was to extend barcodes into 2 dimensions, creating a data matrix. NASA tried this in 1994 with Vericode, used to track and identify space shuttle parts. This code was read by early digital cameras rather than lasers, and was initially proprietary. Around the same time, Masahiro Hara, an engineer at a Japanese auto parts manufacturer, Denso, was getting frustrated at having to scan multiple barcodes for filling in the same box of car components.
そうですね。それと自動車の工場で油を使うので、バーコードが油で汚れると読めなくなるんで、そうすると作業者がキーボードでデータを入力しなければならないので、さらに作業者の負荷がかかるようになってたので。
Hara set out to develop an alternative on his own. He took inspiration from an unusual source.
囲碁というのは基本的に石をその線と線の交点に一応置くんですけども、多少ずれても我々やってる人間としてはどこに置かれてるか分かるってことで、それで囲碁をやってる時にこういうマトリックスのコードで読めるということを考えて白黒のマトリックス上に配置することにしました。
To understand how information is stored in a QR code, I am going to build one myself, in the way Masahiro Hara first conceptualized it, with a Go board. I have the usual black and white stones. White represents 0, black represents 1. And we're going to encode the link to our YouTube channel on this board. So the first step is to convert www.youtube.com/Veritasium into ones and zeros. And we'll do that using byte encoding. Byte encoding uses ASCII, which itself has roots in Morse code. Every character is assigned a number from 1 to 256. Then we convert the ASCII decimal into its binary form. Since 256 is 2 to the power of 8, we can use the 8 binary bit combinations to represent all ASCII characters. These 8 bits make up 1 byte of information. The letter W is assigned the ASCII decimal 119, or 0111011. Doing the same for all characters in www.youtube.com/Veritasium, this is what the string looks like in binary. This is 26 characters long, so it takes up 26 bytes of information.
Now, our board is 25 by 25. This is known as a version 2 QR code.
But there are many different sizes, all readable by your phone camera. Hara's version 1 QR code was 21 by 21, and the largest version today is 177 by 177. That is large enough to hold 3 kilobytes of information.
Just 26 of these would have been enough to store all the information Apollo 11's computer needed to send humans to the moon. The region around a QR code must be empty and of uniform color. This is the quiet zone. A distinguishing feature of QR codes is the 3 square patterns in the corners. These position squares allow the reader to identify the orientation of the code. Now, almost all QR codes also have a 4th square in the last corner, but it's smaller and hence trickier to spot. This is the alignment pattern. It's used to rescale the QR code when it's read from varying distances or from crazy oblique angles. The relative size and distance of the alignment square with respect to the position squares allows the software to rescale it into a proper square. Next to the position squares are plain white strips that isolate them from the rest of the code.
And these are timing strips, zebra pedestrian crossings which connect the top left position square with the other 2. Every QR code has these alternating strips. You should look out for them. QR codes of all sizes visibly look the same, so this tells your phone which version it is and therefore how much data to expect. If there are 5 alternating squares, it's version 1. If there are 9, it's version 2, and so on. And next to those are format strips that contain rules for how to scan the code. I'm placing redstones in the space they occupy for now. There is another feature every QR code has. This 1 pixel adjacent to the bottom right position square, it is always dark. I asked Hara-san if it had any special significance, but he said no. All of this remaining space is for data storage. Data inside a QR code always starts at the bottom right corner. Here, the first 4 squares carry 4 bits that specify the data format. 0001 if it's just numbers, 0010 if it's alphanumeric, so capital letters and numbers, 0100 if it's information stored in bytes, and 1000 for Japanese kanji. The following 8 bits are used to indicate the number of characters in our message. So since we have 26 characters, that should be 00011010. Next, we start arranging our bytes for youtube.com/Veritasium, starting in 8-bit 2-column cells. They follow a zigzag pattern that snakes its way to the top left. Within each cell that represents a byte, the most significant bit, corresponding to 2 to the 7, is at the bottom right, and the least significant, or 2 to the 0, is at the opposite end. 01110111 for W will hence be filled like this. And we'll follow along with the rest. Once we fill in the bytes for www.u, we encounter the alignment pattern after 4 bits. To put in the next T, we simply bypass it and do the same for any of the other fixed regions of the code. Thus, we keep filling in our data in the same zigzag pattern. After we complete www.youtube.c, the cells start looking less regular and more Tetris-like. But the way we put the stones, byte after byte, remains the same. And there go the last 8 bits for the last letter M. But wait a minute, we've only covered about half of our QR code. Well, that's because this whole remaining space is reserved for redundancy. These extra bytes of error correction code allow us to reconstruct information if the QR code is damaged.
But why are QR codes so successful? There are plenty of other 2D matrix codes out there. Well, one reason is that Denso Wave decided not to exercise patent rights on QR codes. Denso instead opted to monetize and sell QR code scanners. Of course, with the rise of smartphones, most people would soon carry a QR code scanner in their pocket. But initially, QR code reading apps were third-party and rather niche. But then, in 2017, Android and Apple built QR code readers right into their camera apps. So the use of these codes took off. The COVID-19 pandemic also gave QR codes a boost worldwide. Suddenly, restaurants and vendors wanted a contactless way to hand out menus and product information. Contactless payment using QR codes took off in India and China. Today, India sees over 12 billion QR code-enabled transactions per month. QR codes also proved handy in storing vaccine records and personal health information in phone wallets. Now, if the possibility of running out of UPC barcodes is remote, for QR codes, it is impossible. The number of unique version 1 QR codes using the lowest redundancy level is 2 to the 152. This is about 10 times the total number of legal chessboard configurations. Which is also why a random distribution of pixels filled into a QR code pattern generally cannot be interpreted as a message.
You have scanned countless QR codes, and when you scan your next one, you'll have a better idea of how it works. But have you ever thought about what QR itself stands for?
QR コードの最大の特徴は、早く読み取りができるということで、素早く反応するということで、クイックレスポンスという名前を付けました。